The stars looked different from the bridge of Seoul's Pride. Captain Lee Hyun stood at the main window watching the massive alien space station grow larger as their ship moved closer. The station was huge beyond belief. It stretched for miles, in every direction with towers and domes that glowed with strange lights. Ships of dozens of different shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. "Distance to station is now 500 kilometers, sir," reported Navigation Officer Park Jin from his console. His voice carried the tension that everyone felt. This was the moment Earth had been preparing for since the first alien signals were detected 3 years ago. Lee Hyun adjusted his uniform and checked his reflection in the dark window. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were Earth's best people chosen for humanity's first meeting with the galactic community. Everything had to be perfect. "Dr. Park Mina, please report to the bridge," Lee Hyun spoke, into the ship's communication system. Within minutes, the chief science officer arrived carrying a thick folder of documents and data pads. "Captain, the presentation materials are ready," Dr. Park Mina said as she handed him the folder. "I have included technical specifications for all our major technologies, including our defense systems and weapons. The translation programs are working well with the alien languages we received." Lee Hyun nodded and opened the folder. Inside were detailed drawings and explanations of human technology, written in simple terms that the aliens could understand. There were pictures of Earth cities and people. There were charts showing human achievements in science and medicine. And there were complete descriptions of human military equipment, including their guns and ammunition. "Commander Kim Jae, report. To the bridge immediately," Lee Hyun called over the communication system. The weapons specialist arrived quickly wearing his dress uniform with several medals on his chest. Kim Jae had fought in Earth's final wars before the planet united under one government. He knew weapons better than anyone. "Sir, the weapon samples are secured in Storage Bay 3, Kim Jae reported. "We have brought examples of our best rifles, pistols, and ammunition as requested by the Galactic Council. Everything is properly documented and ready for demonstration." The bridge crew continued their work as the massive station filled their view. Strange music could be heard over the communication channels. It was unlike anything humans had ever created, with sounds that seemed to come from instruments that did not exist on Earth. "Incoming transmission from the station," reported Communications Officer Han Bak. "They are speaking in Standard Galactic. The translation is coming through clearly." "Put it on the main screen," Lee Hyun ordered. The screen filled with an image that made several crew members step backward. The alien was tall and appeared to be made of living crystal. Its body reflected the lights around it, creating rainbow patterns that moved as it spoke. This was Ambassador Vextar of the hegemony, whom they had been told to expect. "Human vessel Seoul's Pride, you are cleared for docking at Bay 47, the alien said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "I am Ambassador Vextar, and I welcome you to Kepler Station. We are eager to meet your species and learn of your capabilities." "Thank you, Ambassador Vextar," Lee Hyun replied. "We are honored to be here and grateful for this opportunity. We come in peace-seeking friendship and membership in the galactic community." The transmission ended and the ship continued toward the docking bay. Through the windows they could see other alien ships of amazing design. Some looked like they were grown rather than built. Others appeared to be made of pure energy held in geometric shapes. All of them were far more advanced than anything humans had ever created. "Admiral Choi Dae and Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua are ready in the shuttle bay," Kim Jae reported. "All diplomatic and security protocols have been reviewed. We are prepared for any situation." Admiral Choi Dae had been chosen to lead the human delegation because of his experience and wisdom. He had commanded Earth's space forces during the colony wars and was respected by military leaders around the world. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua was Earth's finest marksman and had never missed a target in combat. Together, they represented humanity's strength and skill. The docking process took an hour as the alien computers guided their ship into position. Strange mechanical arms reached out to hold Seoul's Pride in place. The air in the docking bay was tested and found to be safe for humans to breathe. Gravity generators created Earth-normal conditions in the areas where the humans would walk. Final systems check. Lee Hyun ordered as they prepared to leave their ship. All translation devices are working. All recording equipment is active. All weapon samples are properly secured and documented. Dr. Park Mina checked her notes one final time. The presentation had been practiced dozens of times during the long journey to Kepler Station. She knew every detail about human technology and was prepared to answer any questions the aliens might ask. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and the human delegation stepped into the alien station. The corridor beyond was larger than any human building. The walls were covered with symbols and pictures that told the history of dozens of different species. Strange plants grew in gardens that floated in the air without any visible support. Waiting for them was Ambassador Vextar along with several other aliens. There was General Quindar, who looked like a giant lizard walking on two legs. His scales were dark green and his eyes were bright yellow. Scientific Consul Rethmai had multiple arms that moved like tentacles and a head that seemed to be mostly brain. "Welcome, humans," Ambassador Vextar said as his crystal body created new patterns of light. "We have waited long to meet your species. The galaxy is always interested in new members who can contribute to our collective knowledge and strength." "We are honored to be here," Admiral Choi Dae replied with a formal bow. "Humanity comes seeking peace and cooperation. We hope to prove worthy of membership in your great community." General Quindar's yellow eyes studied the humans carefully. "We shall see what you have to offer," he said in a voice that sounded like grinding rocks. "Many species come seeking membership. Few have anything of value to contribute." The human delegation followed their alien guides through corridors filled with wonders. They passed chambers where beings of pure energy floated in geometric patterns. They saw gardens where crystal trees grew toward lights that mimicked distant suns. They walked by workshops where aliens created technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. "The council chamber is ahead," Ambassador Vextar explained as they approached massive doors covered in the symbols of 100 different species. "Inside, you will present your case to the representatives of 43 member species. They will judge whether humanity deserves a place among the galactic community." Lee Hyun felt the weight of his responsibility as the doors began to open. Behind those doors waited the future of the human race. The Grand Council chamber was the largest room Admiral Choi Dae had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadows. Rows of seats rose up the walls in perfect circles. Each seat was designed for a different species. Some looked like thrones made of crystal. Others were pools of liquid where water-breathing aliens could sit. A few were simply empty spaces where beings of pure energy could float. In the center of this massive room stood a small platform where the humans would make their presentation. Above them, Chancellor Mordak watched from the highest seat. The insectoid leader was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and wings that sparkled like metal. His compound eyes reflected the light from dozens of directions. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Admiral Choi Dae began as his voice echoed through the chamber. "We are honored to stand before you today. Humanity comes seeking membership in your great community. We offer our knowledge, our friendship, and our strength to help build a better galaxy." Dr. Park Mina stepped forward carrying a display device that showed images of Earth. Pictures of human cities appeared on screens around the chamber. There were images of hospitals where human doctors saved lives. There were pictures of schools where human children learned about the universe. There were scenes of green forests and blue oceans that showed Earth's natural beauty. "Our world is rich in resources and knowledge," Dr. Park Mina explained. "We have developed advanced medicine that could help other species. Our scientists have made discoveries that could benefit everyone. We wish to share these gifts with the galaxy." Some of the alien representatives made sounds that might have been approval. Others remained silent, watching with eyes that showed no emotion. A few seemed to be ignoring the presentation completely. Commander Kim Jae moved to the center of the platform carrying a metal case. Inside the case were examples of human weapons. There were 3 different rifles, each designed for different purposes. There were 2 pistols that human soldiers carried for personal protection. There were boxes of ammunition containing hundreds of bullets of various sizes. "Now we will demonstrate our defensive capabilities," Admiral Choi Dae announced. "Commander Kim Jae will explain our military technology and show you how our weapons work." Kim Jae opened the case and lifted out a standard military rifle. The weapon was made of steel and synthetic materials. It had been designed for reliability, rather than appearance. Compared to the glowing crystal devices and floating energy weapons visible around the chamber, it looked primitive and crude. "This is our primary infantry weapon," Kim Jae explained, holding the rifle up for everyone to see. It fires solid projectiles at high velocity using chemical propulsion. The projectiles are made of lead and copper and weigh approximately 15 grams each. He opened a box of ammunition and held up a single bullet. The small metal object gleamed under the chamber lights. It was less than 3 inches long and looked incredibly simple compared to the advanced technology surrounding them. "These projectiles are accelerated to a velocity of approximately 800 meters per second, Kim Jae continued. "They transfer kinetic energy to the target, causing immediate incapacitation or elimination of hostile forces." The reaction from the alien representatives was immediate and unmistakable. Sounds that could only be described as laughter filled the chamber. General Quindar's deep voice rumbled with what sounded like amusement. Scientific Consul Rethmai's tentacles waved in patterns that other aliens seemed to find amusing. Chancellor Mordek leaned forward in his high seat, his compound eyes focusing on the small bullet in Kim Jae's hand. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire chamber. "Did I understand correctly, human?" the Chancellor said with what sounded like disbelief. "Your primary weapon technology involves throwing small pieces of metal at your enemies." "That is correct, Chancellor," Admiral Choi Dae replied, maintaining his dignity despite the obvious mockery. "Our kinetic weapons have proven highly effective in all combat situations we have encountered." The laughter from the alien representatives grew louder. A being that looked like a walking tree made sounds like wind through leaves. A creature, covered in blue scales, hissed in a rhythmic pattern. Even the floating energy being seemed to pulse with what might have been amusement. "How wonderfully primitive," General Quindar said, as his yellow eyes gleamed with superiority. "We abandoned such crude methods thousands of years ago. Chemical propulsion metal projectiles, these are the tools of barely civilized species." Scientific Consul Rethmai extended several tentacles toward the bullet Kim Jae was holding. Strange lights played across the metal surface as alien sensors analyzed its composition. "Fascinating," Rethmai declared in a voice like bubbling liquid. "The projectile contains no energy matrix, no particle acceleration, no molecular disruption, capability. It is simply a crude lump of metal propelled by primitive chemistry. How could such a device possibly penetrate modern defensive systems?" Dr. Park Mina tried to explain the physics behind kinetic energy transfer, but the alien representatives were not listening. They were too busy discussing among themselves how amazingly backward human weapons appeared to be. "Our energy shields absorb directed energy attacks," said a tall, thin alien whose skin seemed to be made of living metal. "Our armor composites are designed to disperse molecular disruption. Your simple projectiles would be utterly ineffective against any modern defensive technology." "Indeed," agreed another alien whose voice came from speakers built into its mechanical body. "Even our basic personal protection systems would render such primitive weapons completely useless. I'm surprised your species survived long enough to develop space travel." The mockery continued for several minutes as representative after representative made jokes about human weapons technology. They compared bullets to thrown rocks. They suggested that humans might want to consider upgrading to pointed sticks. They wondered aloud whether humanity had discovered fire yet. Admiral Choi Dae stood quietly through all of this, maintaining his composure, despite the humiliation. Dr. Park Mina gathered her materials with dignity, even as aliens continued to laugh at human achievements. Commander Kim Jae packed away the weapons that had defended Earth through dozens of conflicts but were apparently worthless toys in the eyes of the galaxy. Council Security Chief Kalanthi watched the entire scene from his position near the chamber entrance. The six-armed warrior had remained silent during the presentation, but his multiple eyes had never left the human delegation. Unlike the other aliens, he did not seem amused by the weapons demonstration. Instead, he appeared thoughtful, as if considering possibilities that others had missed. "I believe we have seen enough," Chancellor Mordak finally declared as the laughter began to die down. The human presentation has been most enlightening. We will consider your application for membership and inform you of our decision in due time. The dismissive tone made it clear that the humans had failed to impress the Galactic Council. Their primitive weapons and backward technology marked them as a species unworthy of joining the advanced civilizations that ruled the stars. As the human delegation prepared to leave the chamber, none of them could have imagined that within hours, these same aliens would be begging for help from the primitive weapons they had just finished mocking. The alarm started 30 minutes after the human delegation left the council chamber. The sound was unlike anything Admiral Choi Day had ever heard. It was not the simple electronic beeping of human warning systems. Instead, it was a complex harmony of tones that seemed designed to reach the hearing organs of dozens of different species. Red lights flashed throughout the station corridors as emergency announcements echoed in multiple alien languages. The translation devices worn by the human delegation worked frantically to convert the urgent messages into English. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately, the station's computer system announced. Unknown vessels detected at the edge of sensor range. Configuration matches void swarm battle formations. This is not a drill. Captain Lee Hyun felt his blood turn cold at those words. During the long journey to Kepler Station, the humans had studied every file the aliens had shared about galactic history and politics. The Void Swarm was a name that appeared in the darkest chapters of that history. Sir, what exactly is the Void Swarm? Asked Dr. Park Mina as they followed Ambassador Vextar through corridors filled with running aliens. A nightmare that we hoped was dead, Vextar replied as his crystal body pulsed with darker colors. They are cybernetic warriors who consume entire star systems. Their technology adapts to counter any weapon used against them. No one has seen them for over 200 years. Commander Thanecore of Station Security appeared ahead of them, moving quickly despite his 4 legs and massive bulk. The rhinoceros-like alien was shouting orders to his security teams while studying data on a floating screen. Ambassador Vextar, Thanecore called out as he spotted the group. You must get the human delegation to the protected sectors immediately. The Void Swarm has launched boarding pods. They will reach the station in less than 10 minutes. Through the corridor windows, Admiral Choi Day could see space filling with enemy ships. They were unlike any vessels in the files he had studied. The ships seemed to be part machine and part living creature. Their hulls pulsed with veins of energy while mechanical weapons grew from organic surfaces. How many ships are there? Commander Kim Jae asked as he counted the approaching vessels. Sensor readings show 47 major warships and over 300 smaller attack craft. Thanecore replied without looking away from his screen. Our defense fleet is moving to intercept, but their weapons have proven ineffective against Void Swarm adaptive armor in past conflicts. Chancellor Mordak's voice echoed through the station's communication system. His normally composed tones now carried obvious fear and urgency. All citizens of member species prepare for immediate evacuation, the Chancellor announced. Defense. Protocol 7 is now in effect. All military personnel report to combat stations. May the ancestors protect us all. General Quindar appeared at a corridor intersection, leading a squad of heavily armed soldiers. The lizard warrior's yellow eyes blazed with determination as he checked his weapon systems. Human delegation, follow me to the emergency bunkers, General Quindar commanded. Your primitive weapons will be useless against what is coming. We cannot waste time protecting civilians during combat operations. With respect, General, Admiral Choi Day replied firmly. We are not civilians. We are military officers of the United Earth Federation. If this station is under attack, we will help defend it. General Quindar looked at the humans with something that might have been pity. Your metal-throwing devices cannot penetrate Void Swarm battle armor. You will only get in our way. The first impact shook the entire station as enemy boarding pods struck the outer hull. Emergency lights strobed faster as damage reports flooded the communication channels. The sounds of cutting tools could be heard through the walls as the invaders began forcing their way inside. Scientific Consul Rethmai floated past them toward the laboratory sections, his tentacles moving frantically over multiple control devices. Their technology is even more advanced than our records indicated, he reported. Energy absorption rates are off the scale. Our plasma weapons are having no effect whatsoever. Commander Kim Jae pulled Admiral Choi Dae aside as they moved through the corridors. Sir, I recommend we retrieve our weapons from storage. If the situation becomes desperate, our firearms might make a difference. The aliens seem certain our weapons are useless, Dr. Park Mina pointed out. Should we risk going to the storage areas when the enemy is boarding the station? Sometimes the experts are wrong, Admiral Choi Dae decided. Commander Kim Jae, take your Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua and retrieve our equipment. Captain Lee Hyun, stay with Dr. Park Mina and continue following Ambassador Vextar to safety. The sounds of combat were growing closer as Kim Jae and Yoon Sua made their way to Storage Bay 3. Through the station's internal monitors, they could see the Void Swarm warriors advancing through the corridors. The enemy soldiers were terrifying combinations of organic tissue and mechanical enhancement. Each warrior stood over 8 feet tall with armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their weapons were built directly into their arms and shoulders. Most frightening of all, their defensive systems were visibly adapting to counter the energy weapons being used against them. A squad of station security forces opened fire with advanced plasma rifles. The brilliant energy beams struck the lead, Void Swarm warrior, directly in the chest. For a moment, the alien armor glowed with absorbed energy. Then the surface shifted and changed, becoming mirror bright. The next plasma bolt reflected harmlessly off the adaptive armor. Energy absorption complete, the warrior announced in a voice like grinding gears. Defensive matrix updated, plasma-based weapons no longer effective. The security team fell back, as their most powerful weapons became useless. Similar scenes were playing out throughout the station as every type of energy weapon failed against the Void Swarm's adaptive technology. In the council chamber, Chancellor Mordak coordinated the defense while General Quindar's forces established fallback positions. But every report brought worse news. Particle beam weapons stopped working after the first few shots. Molecular disruptors were countered within minutes. Even exotic quantum weapons became ineffective as the enemy armor adapted to counter them. War Prince Nethys of the Void Swarm is requesting communication, reported the station's communication officer. Put him through, Chancellor Mordak ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a nightmare. War Prince Nethys had once been organic but now more machine than living creature. Half of his face was cybernetic with a glowing red eye. Multiple mechanical arms extended from his torso, each ending in a different weapon system. I am War Prince Nethys of the Void Swarm, the creature announced in a voice like breaking metal. This sector and all systems within it now belong to us. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will harvest your biological components for enhancement. This is Chancellor Mordak of the Galactic Council, came the reply. We do not surrender to pirates and murderers. Our forces will fight to the last warrior. War Prince Nethys made a sound that might have been laughter. Your energy weapons are already useless against our adaptive defenses. In 1 hour, this station will be ours. Your advanced technology means nothing when it can be turned against itself. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Around the station, the defense forces continued fighting, but their weapons became less effective with each passing minute. The Void Swarm warriors advanced steadily toward the central areas where the alien leaders had gathered. In Storage Bay 3, Commander Kim Jae and Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua retrieved their simple human weapons. The rifles and pistols looked even more primitive, surrounded by the advanced alien technology stored in the same area. Think these will actually work? Yoon Sua asked as she loaded her rifle with standard ammunition. Only one way to find out, Kim Jae replied as the sounds of combat grew closer to their location. Neither of them could have guessed that their primitive weapons would soon prove more effective than all the advanced technology the galaxy could bring to bear. The council chamber had become a fortress under siege. Alien security forces had barricaded the entrances while their leaders tried to coordinate a defense that was failing everywhere. Reports from around the station painted a picture of total disaster. The Void Swarm warriors were advancing through every sector, and no weapon seemed able to stop them. Admiral Choi Dae watched the main tactical display showing red markers spreading through the station like a disease. Each red marker represented enemy forces that had overcome the defenders and secured another section. At the current rate of advance, the council chamber would be breached within 30 minutes. Our particle cannons are completely ineffective, reported Commander Thanakor from his command station. The enemy armor adapted to counter them after the first engagement. The same thing happened with our plasma weapons and molecular disruptors. Scientific Consul Rethmai floated near the chamber's main computer, trying to find some technical solution to their problem. His tentacles moved frantically over control surfaces as he analyzed the enemy's adaptive systems. The Void Swarm technology is more advanced than anything in our databases, Rethmai announced. Their defensive matrix can analyze and counter any directed energy attack within minutes. It is as if they have prepared specifically to face our weapons. General Quindar slammed one scaled fist against the tactical display in frustration. 2,000 years of military advancement and we are helpless against these cybernetic monsters. How is this possible? Chancellor Mordak's compound eyes reflected the red warning lights as he considered their options. The insectoid leader had ruled the Galactic Council for over a century, but had never faced a crisis like this one. Perhaps we should consider evacuation, the Chancellor suggested quietly. If we cannot stop them here, we might be able to regroup at another location. The evacuation ships are trapped in their bays, Commander Thanakor replied. Void Swarm. Fighters are destroying anything that tries to leave the station. We are completely cut off. The sound of weapons fire was getting closer as the human delegation huddled near the chamber's center. Captain Lee Hyun checked his communication device, trying to contact Commander Kim Jae and Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua, but received no response. Where are our people? Dr. Park Mina asked with obvious concern. They should have returned from the storage area by now. The corridors between here and Storage Bay 3 are probably controlled by enemy forces, Admiral Choi Dae replied. Kim, Jae and Yoon Sua are experienced soldiers. They will find a way back to us if possible. Ambassador Vextar's crystal body had turned dark with stress as he monitored the tactical situation. I apologize for bringing your people into this situation, Admiral. Your species should not have to face extinction because of our failures. Admiral Choi Dae was about to reply when the chamber's main entrance exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air as a squad of Void Swarm warriors stepped through the breach. Their adaptive armor gleamed with energy absorption matrices that had countered every weapon the station's defenders possessed. The lead warrior was massive even by Void Swarm standards. Cybernetic implants covered half of his organic body, while mechanical weapons had been grafted directly onto his arms and shoulders. His voice when he spoke sounded like grinding metal. I am War Commander Vexthul of the Void Swarm, the creature announced as his red cybernetic eye swept across the chamber. You will surrender immediately or be harvested for biological components. General Quindar raised his plasma rifle and fired a sustained burst at the lead warrior. The energy beam struck the alien's chest armor and was immediately absorbed. The armor's surface shifted and adapted, becoming perfectly reflective. When General Quindar fired again, the plasma bolt bounced harmlessly away. Energy weapons are useless, War Commander Vexthul declared. Your technology is primitive compared to our adaptive defenses. Submit to harvesting and your suffering will be brief. More Void Swarm warriors entered the chamber as the defending security forces fell back. Their weapons had all become ineffective within minutes of first contact. The aliens who had mocked human technology an hour earlier now found themselves completely defenseless. It was at that moment that Commander Kim Jae and Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua arrived through a side entrance that led from the maintenance tunnels. Both humans carried their simple kinetic weapons and moved with the confidence of experienced soldiers. Admiral Choi Dae saw them first and made a decision that would change galactic history. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua, he called out across the chamber. Show them what a bullet can do. Yoon Sua stepped forward, raising her standard military rifle. The weapon looked crude and primitive compared to the advanced alien technology scattered around the chamber. But it was loaded with simple lead bullets propelled by chemical explosives, just as human weapons had been for centuries. War Commander Vexthul turned toward the new threat and laughed. The sound was like metal being torn apart. Another primitive energy weapon, he said as his adaptive armor prepared to counter whatever beam or particle stream the human might fire. Yunsua aimed carefully at the center of the warrior's chest, where his cybernetic enhancements were heaviest. She had been trained to put bullets exactly where she wanted them and had never missed an important shot. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that was completely different from the humming energy weapons the aliens used. The bullet traveled at 800 meters per second, just as Commander Kim Jae had explained during their presentation. It was a simple piece of lead and copper weighing 15 grams and propelled by chemical combustion. The adaptive armor that had easily countered plasma beams and particle weapons had no defense against kinetic energy. The bullet punched straight through the defensive matrix and buried itself deep in the warrior's cybernetic chest. Sparks flew from damaged systems as the massive alien staggered backward. For a moment, the entire chamber was silent, except for the sound of the wounded warrior's mechanical breathing. Every alien in the room stared at the simple human weapon that had accomplished what their most advanced technology could not. War Commander Vexthal looked down at the hole in his chest with what might have been surprise. "Impossible," he said, as fluid leaked from damaged components. No primitive kinetic weapon could penetrate adaptive battle armor. "Kinetic energy is kinetic energy," Commander Kim Jae said as he raised his own rifle. "Physics does not adapt." The wounded Void Swarm warrior tried to bring his arm-mounted weapons to bear, but Yunsua fired again. The second bullet struck his cybernetic eye, causing a shower of sparks and electronic failures. The massive alien crashed to the floor as his life support systems shut down. The other Void Swarm warriors in the chamber hesitated for the first time since the battle began. Their adaptive armor was designed to counter every known energy weapon in the galaxy, but it had never encountered simple kinetic projectiles that transferred momentum directly to their targets. General Quindar stared at his useless plasma rifle, then looked at the humans with their primitive firearms. "How is this possible?" he asked in amazement. "Sometimes simple solutions work best," Admiral Choi Dae replied as he drew his sidearm. "Commander Kim Jae, distribute ammunition to anyone who can use it." Dr. Park Mina helped the alien technicians understand why our weapons are effective. Scientific Consul Rethmai floated closer to examine the fallen warrior. His tentacles probed the holes left by the bullets, while his analytical equipment studied the damage patterns. "Remarkable," Rethmai announced. The kinetic projectiles completely bypassed the adaptive matrix. The armor was analyzing for energy signatures that simply do not exist with chemical propulsion systems. Chancellor Mordak's compound eyes focused on the simple bullet that Lieutenant Colonel Yunsua held up for examination. "You mean these primitive metal slugs are more effective than our most advanced weapons?" "Against this enemy, yes, Dr. Park," Mina explained. "Their defenses were designed to counter energy-based attacks. They never anticipated facing weapons that rely purely on kinetic force." The remaining Void Swarm warriors in the chamber began advancing again, but now they faced humans armed with weapons their technology could not adapt to counter. The tide of battle was about to change in ways no one could have predicted. What happened next would be remembered in galactic history as the Battle of Kepler Station. Lieutenant Colonel Yunsua moved through the council chamber like a trained predator, picking her targets with deadly precision. Each bullet she fired found its mark, bypassing the Void Swarm's adaptive defenses and causing devastating damage to their cybernetic systems. Commander Kim Jae worked quickly to distribute ammunition to the alien defenders. Most had never seen kinetic weapons before, but the basic principle of pointing and pulling a trigger was universal. Within minutes, General Quindar was firing a human pistol with surprising accuracy for someone who had never used such a primitive device. "Aim for the cybernetic components," Kim Jae instructed as he handed rifles to Commander Thanekor's security forces. "The bullets will penetrate their armor, but you want to hit the machinery that keeps them functional." Dr. Park Mina established a communication link with the station's computer systems and began broadcasting instructions to defending forces throughout Kepler Station. Her voice carried over emergency channels in dozens of alien languages as translation programs worked to spread the vital information. "All defenders, this is Dr. Park Mina of the human delegation," she announced. "Kinetic projectile weapons are effective against Void Swarm adaptive armor. Repeat kinetic projectiles can penetrate their defenses. Chemical propulsion firearms will work where energy weapons fail. Captain Lee Hyun coordinated with station security to identify areas where human weapons could make the biggest difference. The tactical displays showed Void Swarm forces had advanced deep into the station, but their progress had slowed as word spread about the effectiveness of bullets. "We need to reach the main armory," Captain Lee Hyun told Ambassador Vextar. "The station must have some kinetic weapons stored somewhere. Not everything in the galaxy can be energy-based." Vextar's crystal body pulsed with new hope as he consulted the station's database. There are historical weapons in the military museum. Some species used kinetic projectiles thousands of years ago before advancing to energy systems. The weapons are old, but they might still function. Admiral Choi Dae made the decision that turned the battle. We split into teams. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua leads a strike force to clear the corridors between here and the museum. Commander Kim Jae stays here to train more alien defenders. I will coordinate with General Quindar to plan a counterattack. Yoon Sua gathered a mixed force of humans and aliens armed with the few kinetic weapons they had available. General Quindar insisted on joining the mission despite never having used a human rifle before. Commander Thanecore brought several of his best security officers, who were eager to carry weapons that actually worked against the enemy. The corridors of Kepler Station had become a battlefield where the most advanced military technology in the galaxy had proven useless. Abandoned energy weapons littered the floors while their former users had fallen back to defensive positions. But now the tide was beginning to turn as human firearms proved devastatingly effective. Yoon Sua's strike force moved through the station with growing confidence. Each Void Swarm warrior they encountered fell to simple bullets that their adaptive armor could not counter. The enemy's cybernetic enhancements that made them nearly invulnerable to energy weapons became liabilities when kinetic projectiles damaged their delicate electronics. "I cannot believe how effective these primitive weapons are," General Quindar said as he reloaded his borrowed pistol. "Why did we ever abandon kinetic projectiles in favor of energy systems?" "Energy weapons have advantages," Yoon Sua replied as she checked the corridor ahead for enemies. "No recoil, unlimited ammunition as long as you have power, better accuracy at long range. But they all depend on directed energy, and that can be countered by the right technology." Commander Thanecore's forelegs carried him quickly through the Yao station as he led his security forces toward key defensive positions. The rhinoceros-like alien had adapted quickly to human weapons and was proving to be an excellent shot despite his massive size. "This is Commander Thanecore to all security stations," he broadcast over the communication system. "Human kinetic weapons are confirmed effective against enemy armor. Prioritize retrieval of chemical projectile firearms from museum and storage areas." In the council chamber, scientific consul Rethmai had been studying the fallen Void Swarm warriors with intense fascination. His tentacles probed the bullet holes while sensors analyzed the damage patterns and failure modes of the enemy's cybernetic systems. "The kinetic projectiles cause cascade failures in their enhancement networks," Rethmai reported to Admiral Choi Dae. "Once the bullets damage key components, their entire system begins to shut down. It is remarkably efficient." Dr. Park Mina worked with the station's engineers to identify ways of combining human ballistic technology with alien targeting systems. The results were impressive, as energy-based sensors and guidance systems directed kinetic projectiles with deadly accuracy. "We can use our gravitometric sensors to calculate precise trajectory adjustments," she explained to a group of alien technicians. "Your targeting computers are far superior to anything we have on Earth. Combined with our kinetic weapons, the IT results should be devastating." Meanwhile, Yoon Sua's strike force had reached the military museum and found exactly what they were looking for. Ancient kinetic weapons from dozens of different species filled display cases throughout the building. Some were crude chemical projectile systems similar to human firearms. Others used magnetic acceleration or compressed gas to propel solid projectiles. Most of these weapons are thousands of years old, Ambassador Vextar warned as they began, breaking open display cases. "We cannot be certain they will still function properly. Metal and springs do not degrade as quickly as electronics," Yoon Sua replied as she examined an ancient rifle from a species that had been extinct for millennia. "These weapons were built to last, and many of them use principles similar to our own firearms." General Quindar lifted a massive weapon that appeared to have been designed for a four-armed species. This appears to be some form of automatic kinetic projectile launcher. If we can determine how to operate it, the firepower could be significant. The breakthrough came when Commander Thanecore discovered a cache of ammunition that had been preserved, along with the historical weapons. The projectiles were made of materials that remained stable across geological time periods and were still perfectly functional after thousands of years. Within an hour of Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua's first shot, the balance of power on Kepler Station had shifted dramatically. Human weapons specialists worked with alien engineers to restore ancient kinetic systems to working order. Security forces throughout the station were being equipped with firearms that could actually damage their attackers. The Void Swarm forces found themselves facing an enemy they had never encountered before. Their adaptive armor that could counter any energy weapon in the galaxy was useless against simple bullets propelled by chemical explosives. For the first time in centuries of conquest, they were being driven back by supposedly primitive technology. War Prince. Nethys received reports from throughout the station with growing disbelief. His forces that had been advancing steadily through every sector were now falling back under fire from weapons his databases claimed should be completely ineffective. How are chemical projectile weapons penetrating our adaptive battle armor? He demanded from his command ship orbiting the station. The defensive matrix cannot analyze kinetic energy signatures, his science officer reported. The armor was never designed to counter solid projectile weapons. Our enhancement networks are vulnerable to physical damage from metal slugs. For the first time since beginning the attack, War Prince Nethys felt something that might have been concern. The Void Swarm had conquered dozens of star systems using their ability to adapt to any weapon used against them. But these humans had found the one weakness in their seemingly perfect defensive systems. On Kepler Station, the counterattack was beginning as human-trained alien forces moved to retake areas that had been overrun by the enemy. Simple bullets, fired from primitive weapons, were proving more effective than all the advanced military technology the galaxy could produce. The tide had turned, and the Void Swarm was about to learn that sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best ones. The final battle took place in the central hub of Kepler Station, where War Prince Nethys had come personally to salvage his failing invasion. The cybernetic warlord stood 12 feet tall, with multiple mechanical arms and weapon systems integrated directly into his body. He was the ultimate fusion of organic intelligence and mechanical enhancement that the Void Swarm represented. Admiral Choi Dae faced him with nothing more than a standard-issue human sidearm loaded with simple lead bullets. The contrast could not have been more dramatic. On one side stood millennia of technological advancement and cybernetic enhancement. On the other side was a middle-aged human with a weapon that used principles unchanged since Earth's Industrial Revolution. "You cannot defeat me with your primitive projectile thrower," War Prince Nethys declared as his red cybernetic eye focused on the Admiral. "I am enhanced beyond the limits of organic life. My armor has been reinforced to resist all known weapons. Systems. Your armor was designed to counter energy weapons," Admiral Choi Dae replied calmly as he raised his pistol. "But momentum is momentum, and kinetic energy does not care how advanced your defenses are." The War Prince launched himself forward with mechanical legs that could have torn through steel bulkheads. His multiple arms brought weapon systems to bear that could have vaporized an entire squad of soldiers. But he had never faced an enemy who relied on such simple physics. Admiral Choi Dae fired 3 times in rapid succession. Each bullet struck precisely where he aimed, penetrating the adaptive armor that had made the Void Swarm invincible for centuries. The War Prince's mechanical enhancements sparked and failed as kinetic damage cascaded through his cybernetic systems. The ancient warrior crashed to the deck plating as his life support systems shut down one by one. His final words were barely audible through damaged vocal processors. "Impossible," War Prince Nethys whispered as his red eye dimmed. "Defeated by primitive chemical weapons." With their leader fallen, the remaining Void Swarm forces throughout the station began a chaotic retreat. Their adaptive technology that had made them seemingly invincible had proven useless against simple kinetic weapons. For the first time in their history of conquest, They were fleeing from an enemy rather than absorbing their technology. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua and her mixed forces of humans and aliens pursued the retreating invaders through the station corridors. The ancient kinetic weapons from the museum had proven just as effective as modern human firearms. Bullets fired from weapons that were thousands of years old still punched through the most advanced armor the galaxy had ever created. All Void Swarm forces are withdrawing to their ships, reported Commander Thanecore from his security station. Our combined forces have retaken 70% of the station. The enemy is in full retreat. The alien representatives who had mocked human weapons just hours earlier now watched in amazement as their rescuers secured the station with firearms they had dismissed as primitive toys. The irony was not lost on anyone present that the most advanced military technology in the galaxy had failed where simple bullets succeeded. In the council chamber, Chancellor Mordak addressed the human delegation with a humility that had been completely absent from their earlier meeting. The insectoid leader's compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he chose his words carefully. Admiral Choi Dae, the Chancellor began, Galactic Council owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid. Your weapons and your warriors have saved us from certain destruction. We were wrong to dismiss your technology as primitive. Scientific Consul Rethmai floated forward, carrying data tablets filled with analysis of the battle. His tentacles moved excitedly as he presented his findings to the assembled representatives. The effectiveness of kinetic projectile weapons against adaptive defenses represents a fundamental breakthrough in military science, Rethmai announced. We must immediately begin research into combining human ballistic technology with our own defensive systems. General Quindar approached Admiral Choi Dae carrying the human pistol he had used during the battle. The scaled warrior's yellow eyes showed a respect that had not been there before. I have been a soldier for over 2 centuries. General, Quindar said as he offered the weapon back to its owner. I have commanded fleets and conquered star systems. But today I learned that experience and wisdom matter more than advanced technology. Will you teach our forces your methods of warfare? Dr. Park Meena stepped forward carrying the presentation materials that had seemed so inadequate just hours earlier. Now the same technical specifications and weapon demonstrations that had provoked laughter were being studied with intense interest by alien scientists and military leaders. We would be honored to share our knowledge with the galactic community, Dr. Park Meena replied. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and using the right tool for each situation. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective one. Ambassador Vextar's crystal body pulsed with colors that indicated deep gratitude and respect. The tall alien moved closer to Captain Lee Hyun and spoke in tones that carried across the entire chamber. Captain Lee Hyun, I formally present humanity with full membership in the Galactic Council, Vextar announced. Your species has proven their worth not through submission to our standards, but by exceeding them in ways we never imagined possible. The formal ceremony that followed was unlike any in the Council's history. Instead of humanity being judged by galactic standards, the galaxy was learning to appreciate human innovations. Requests for military advisors and weapons training came from dozens of member species who wanted to incorporate kinetic weapons into their own defense systems. Commander Kim Jae found himself surrounded by alien engineers eager to understand the principles behind chemical propulsion systems. His simple explanations of gunpowder and bullet ballistics were being recorded and analyzed by some of the most advanced scientific minds in the galaxy. The beauty of kinetic weapons is their reliability, Kim Jae explained to a group of fascinated technicians. Energy systems can be disrupted or countered, but a bullet will always follow the laws of physics. Momentum and kinetic energy are universal constants. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua was approached by military commanders from multiple species requesting training in human marksmanship techniques. The skills that had made her Earth's finest marksman were now being recognized as valuable assets for galactic defense. Accuracy with kinetic weapons requires understanding of ballistics, wind resistance, gravity, and target movement, Yoon Sua explained to her eager students. But most importantly, it requires patience and the ability to remain calm under pressure. As the emergency lights were replaced by normal illumination and damage control teams began repairs throughout the station, the magnitude of what had happened became clear. Humanity had not just joined the galactic community, they had saved it using weapons that every advanced species had abandoned long ago. Admiral Choi Day stood before the assembled council representatives and spoke words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Today we learned that progress is not always about moving forward, he said as his voice carried clearly through the chamber. Sometimes the most advanced solution is to remember what worked in the past. A bullet does not need to be smart to be effective. It just needs to be fired by someone who understands when and how to use it. The applause that followed came from beings with hands, tentacles, claws, and appendages that had no human equivalent. But the sound was unmistakably one of respect and admiration for the species that had saved them all. Chancellor Mordak formally concluded the historic session with words that marked a new era in galactic relations. Let it be recorded that on this day, humanity proved that wisdom often lies in simplicity. The Galactic Council welcomes Earth not as a junior member learning from their betters, but as valued allies whose knowledge complements our own. May our combined strength protect the galaxy from all threats. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, the aliens who had mocked them now lined the corridors to show their respect. The primitive weapons that had provoked laughter were now being studied and copied by the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Dr. Park Mina carried with her dozens of research proposals for joint human-alien military development projects. Commander Kim Jae had been appointed as the first human instructor at the Galactic Military Academy. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Sua would establish marksmanship training programs on dozens of different worlds. The mockery had become admiration, the primitive had proven superior, and humanity had earned its place among the stars not by abandoning what made them human, but by showing the galaxy that sometimes the old ways really are the best ways. Captain Lee Hyun took one last look at Kepler Station before their ship departed. The massive structure showed signs of damage from the Void Swarm attack, but it was being repaired by crews that now included human engineers working alongside alien technicians. "Admiral," Lee Hyun said, as Earth appeared on their screens, "what do you think our next challenge will be?" Admiral Choi Day smiled as he watched their home planet grow larger. "Whatever it is, Captain, I am confident we will face it the same way we always have. With determination, courage, and the right tool for the jaunt behind them, Kepler Station continued its orbit around their